Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with Neustar and Rio SEO, a roadmap for local listings elevating the customer journey. My name is Lizzie Roth, and I am a Senior Account Manager for Localogy, and I will be your host for today's event. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated to all attendees with the presentation within 24 hours of the broadcast. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the broadcast by using the question window in your control panel. Our speakers today are Brian Smith, Rio SEO's Director of Data Partnerships, and Lynne Brehmer, Neustar's Director of Product Management. Without further ado, I will hand things over to Brian and Lynne to get started.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate the introduction. Hello, everybody, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We all know that the past few days and weeks have been a bit hectic and a little unpredictable for us all. So to at least say the least, we sincerely appreciate you all taking the time out of your schedules to be with us today to hear today's webinar. Again, my name's Brian Smith, and I've been with Rio SEO for a little over 2 years, but have been in the local space serving enterprise brands for about 9 years now. A little bit about Rio is that we're a SaaS local marketing automation platform that provides enterprise solutions to manage local listings, reputation management, and as well as locators and local landing pages for solutions for enterprises. So Lynne, without any further ado, I will let you introduce yourself from here.
Great, thanks, Brian. My name is Lynne Brehmer. I've been with Neustar for 5 years, and I oversee our Localease listing management solutions. Localease works closely with partners like Rio, as well as our group of 90+ distribution partners to help businesses get their listings found accurately and consistently online and where consumers search. So during today's webinar, we're going to discuss the importance of listings accuracy, how businesses can best work with the solution providers in the local search space to optimize their listings, and how to mitigate common issues in order to drive consumers to their locations.
Great. Well, with that in mind, I want to talk about the importance of local listings and the accuracy and what it represents for brands within what I consider as a local ecosystem. So as enterprise brands, it's absolutely essential to understand the value of what your data plays within your individual local strategy. In my opinion, having a single source of truth and utilizing that throughout your enterprise is vital to maintain the consistency between all individual listings. Enterprises need to utilize the same data source for digital entities, such things like websites, listings, mobile apps, to maintain this consistency among the ecosystem for your clients to be able to find you online, thus preventing negative consumer experiences. This is an essential fact because consumers see it as the brand's responsibility to manage and maintain each of the location listings for your stores, and can ultimately lose trust in you as a brand if they have too many negative experiences. In addition, Google also may not be able to identify that NAP consistency between all of the places and where they look for information to validate it. And they'll look for other individual places if they don't have that confidence in your information you're syndicating, and start populating information from there. So worse yet, they could actually be feeding inaccurate information as a result of your specific lack of continuity from that single source.
And one of the things I quickly realized when I started working at Localease was the complexity of the local data ecosystem. It's made up of countless players who are constantly exchanging business listing information. This back and forth enables bad or outdated data to persist and get recycled. So most business owners are unaware of that large degree of data sharing that occurs and the resulting difficulties it causes when trying to correct and update their information. If a business tried to correct their data on their own, they would likely update it in one place, move on to another, only to find shortly thereafter that the data they previously corrected is then out of date again due to providers sourcing from each other. As an example of this, most businesses had at one time a listing in their phone book or the 411 directory. These directory assistance files and scans of phone books are still used throughout the entire digital publishing ecosystem, showing up on all major search engines, navigation platforms, and online publishing sites, even though most of us haven't opened a phone book for years. Businesses don't realize that this data is still relevant and thus don't bother to keep their phone book and 411 listing or maintain it. So key takeaway here is don't ignore any publishing medium in your strategy. Then I wanted to speak a little bit about the role of aggregators and specifically the approach that Localese has taken. So aggregators, who are considered by most in the industry to be Neustar, Localese, Infogroup, Factual, and Axiom, have played a large role in the local search ecosystem for years. I did want to note that Axiom departed their listing management and distribution business in 2019. 10 years ago, aggregated data was crucial because the ability for businesses to submit first-party data to search engines didn't exist. So aggregated data was the only way that search engines could populate US-wide business directories. But as the industry moved to a first-party model and built mechanisms to collect data directly from businesses, aggregation has become far less critical. Localese followed this shift, and now the majority of our revenue is generated from our listing syndication services rather than selling data. Having said that, we still perform some aggregation as many of our distribution partners still rely on our aggregated data to populate content on their sites where first-party data is not available. That aggregation process begins with an initial compilation of data sources, and then we apply a set of intelligence and hygiene processes on top to build as accurate as possible of the consumer-facing businesses in the United States and Canada. So while aggregation still remains somewhat important, most of us have shifted our business models to offer value via syndication services. So what's the role of syndicators? Well, there's no better authoritative source for the correct information about a business listing than the business itself. Syndicators offer services to businesses that enable them to publish accurate information widely across the local search ecosystem. And Localese has partnered with local marketing platforms like Rio SEO, as well as over 90+ local search publishers to push the correct information about our collective group of business clients across a broad network of local search sites, apps, and navigation systems. This push not only replaces any misinformation on those platforms, but also sends a clear signal to all others who draw data from those platforms that fresh, optimized, syndicated information is the source of truth. For enterprise brands, the ability to monitor local listings at scale and identify opportunities is mission critical. So the process of syndication to capitalize them is the next step in a holistic local listings management strategy.
So I want to talk a little bit about some potential impacts of inaccurate listings and what that means for enterprise brands. Often enterprises overlook the causation of inaccurate listings and the consequences it may have on their businesses as consumers look to run into those negative experiences as they're looking for those specific locations. The first one is poor user experience. So I'd like everyone to consider this scenario. You headed to a store that's closest near you and they're not open. Or even worse yet, Google My Business says that it's no longer, it says that it's available for you to actually do business with, but it's no longer there. Based on these types of experiences, 1 in 3 searchers will choose another brand to do business with based on that poor or negative user experience. 2, update times can be slow, especially if you look at getting to closed loop navigation systems like in-dash or handheld navigational systems. I want everyone to take this into account and make sure that you adjust for your individual local strategies appropriately to account for this fact and time. Be prepared for your local search visibility to be reduced in app consistency. It's not able to be found by major search engines. Look at consistency as being a vote of confidence for search engines. The more places they can specifically find information about your individual location or your business, the better ability that you'll be able to be showing up for search. 4, surprisingly enough, consumer trust can be eroded, like I had said, from that poor consumer experience on that first. Most people are brand loyal. I know I'm one of them. So reward those individual customers with positive experiences and negative ones and keep their business for the years to come. Finally, the most important one, in my opinion, is having a missed opportunity due to just poor or outdated data. You always want to close the business or win it and not lose it. There's nothing worse than seeing diminished revenue as a result of something that is so easily controlled. Local business data as it continuously evolves. The web of enterprise location data can absolutely be complex, a little confusing, and continuously shifting, but it's absolutely critical to maintain as an enterprise brand. The next generation local search optimization is to be proactive and to take holistic approaches by seeking out and removing sources of friction in local listings before they interfere with the consumer experience as they find you online. To understand the order of magnitude with the amount of change that happens each individual year, approximately 20% of all business records change, as 2.4 million businesses pop up or close down each year. The data degradation and churn within local listings is absolutely rapid and prolific, which is why search engines utilize other sources beyond the information that's being seeded by the enterprises. An estimated 60% of businesses identify data is out of date within 2 years, which is according to the US Census Bureau. And then I'd like to talk about some traits for enterprise brands and what you should actually strive for a good local holistic strategy. When you think about how much an enterprise should put into local priority into place, I would start with the following. One is absolute accuracy. Verify each individual location's details. Make sure you correct errors, eliminate any duplicates where possible, and syndicate the accurate information regularly. Second is consistency. Achieve a uniform brand process across all digital entities like websites, maps, directories, apps, and other devices that might utilize this location data source. Retain brand control while empowering local managers to create hyper-local content that consumers crave and want to help them find your locations. Integration. Sync all updates across Google My Business, search, map ecosystems so consumers in all regions and neighborhoods have access to the same accurate information in real time to provide those positive experiences. Optimization. Ensure that listings for each individual location contain information consumers expect to see when they're out searching for businesses online. This includes exterior, interior photos. Make sure you have hours of operations, possible methods of payments that are being accepted, and then real consumer reviews and a whole lot more, so you can actually create a rich environment for your individual consumers to interact with your listings. Visibility. In my opinion, show up everywhere where consumers are searching and make the most relevance of your brand and its products and services clear to search engines. Use specific keywords in your optimization tactics and properly mark up your local pages to which your local listings will drive traffic for you. Make the connection between motivated searchers and your locations to close the loop. One of the things that we constantly see within local search is duplicate listings. These can be created by a couple of different ways. One, just the brand itself. Think of acquisitions, mergers, changing in branding, business relocation. These all can exacerbate duplicate listings if your enterprise is not utilizing a centralized source to publish this information out to the local ecosystem. Two, data aggregators. Search engines, apps, navigational platforms are consistently trying to gauge which information about your location is most trustworthy. When listings are not managed, data that contradicts yours are allowed to proliferate, and it can seem as though that the more voluminous information must actually be the correct version. Actively monitor and manage all of the way to detect and correct your duplicates that might be found. And finally, consumers. In a digital age where social engagement is encouraged, platforms are asking consumers to provide their experiences, do individual social check-ins, or leave comments. All of these can create skeleton listings if your listings aren't already there for the consumers to interact with, which contain small bits of information about your business, and the consumers still believe that you're actually publishing and interacting with those specific listings. Two, there's ownership conflicts. I know this is one that we all consistently get challenged with. It may seem like a common sense that the brand should take control of the individual listings, but these individual ownership conflicts muddy the waters quickly, and you can factor in franchisees and as well as local owners, providers, hospital systems, issue around corporate email ownership, etc. And even the odd scrupulous competitor can actually claim your listings if it's not claimed. Some ownership conflicts are simpler to resolve than others, Sometimes gaining ownership requires a persistent manual intervention, in which cases causes the support of an experienced team of local listings professionals who can save the brand much time and grief. And then finally, negative or low volume reviews. The impact of local reviews on visibility is often overlooked and profound, but couldn't be more critical to a local strategy. 72% of consumers won't even take action if they've heard a negative consumer with somebody else about your business. Keep that in mind the next time you're thinking about local reviews. Even more important, some studies suggest that reviews are actually a signal for important citation accuracy, as important as citation accuracy for local search visibility. So keep that in mind as you're trying to rank for individual desired business terms. Lynn?
All right, thanks, Brian. And so accurate, optimized local listings are an integral part of your brand's marketing strategy. Businesses who don't actively manage their listings may suffer from limited information being communicated to consumers about their products and services, and are also more susceptible to incorrect data creeping into their profiles from unreliable sources. As you look at this set of 2 listings here, a consumer is much more likely to make the effort to visit a business that displays a full set of hours of operation, interior and exterior photos, real customer reviews, etc., than a business listing that simply displays their name, address, and phone number. Your profile and the experience you offer consumers at the local level is critical in building visibility, driving traffic, and converting motivated consumers from the search experience into your store. A robust local presence on search sites and apps is a key driver to help businesses drive traffic and outperform their competitors. Brian?
I so often do that, carry conversations with myself as I'm on mute. Thanks. So let's talk a little bit about syndication platforms and how they can help. This is where we begin to partner with syndication partners such as Localogy. We have a technology that enables enterprises to amass intelligence around a location to inform decisions around cleansing and standardizing location data, adding individual items such as geocode, or looking at disparate information among your individual enterprise and being able to conjoin those into one individual usable source file. We then send our clients' data to syndicator partners, where they begin their individual process of adding intelligence for each individual listing or point of interest and adding it to their individual catalog, so then the publishing partners can take use of it. I know Lynn referred to some of the steps they go through for kind of building out the point of interest or the location listing information, but I'll let her continue the journey for you.
Yeah, let me go into that in more detail. So when Localogy receives the listing from our partners like Rio, we run the listing through our identity resolution engine to determine if it's a new listing or an existing listing that needs to be updated or closed. We then standardize the listing into a common format that can be easily ingested by our 90+ distribution partners. We analyze the listing and look for things like address normalization that needs to be applied. Are there non-publishable characters in the business name that ultimately won't be accepted by our publisher? Or we also look to see if the listing is part of a chain of stores, and if it is, what Localogy's chain ID it should be associated with. And this really helps our distribution partners get that listing out accurately on their website. These efforts ultimately enable businesses to be found accurately and consistently across the local search ecosystem by consumers.
Great, which brings us to today's takeaways. A couple of things in which that I would like everyone to turn around and take away as an enterprise brand as you're looking to expand your local effort and scale it is: one, you should always own your own individual listings. Never let your local listing provider retain or create an ownership under their own individual specific account. Instead, they should be creating and claiming your listings under the account credentials that they've provided for you. 2, seek out as many duplicates that you can that create those negative consumer experiences where they can find you online. That's the worst thing that you can do as an enterprise, and not controlling the individual ecosystem and looking at sourced information that could be potential conflict for you. 3, utilize a single source of location information. Publish this out to as many places where consumers are making their discovery process and looking for utility-based needs, such as driving directions or a clicked call within Google Maps. Be patient with a local strategy, as I consider it really a long game, as you work to turn around and correct the systemic issues within what I would consider as a local ecosystem, and to get your individual brand's data pushed out to clean up all that bad data that's already currently being utilized.
Great. And two takeaways I have are to use a broad publishing approach and don't ignore any local search platforms due to the data being constantly exchanged between the players in the local search space. Incorrect data in a smaller directory can easily find its way into the listing database of the larger search platforms and create that poor experience we were referencing. And then lastly, first-party data from the business themselves is considered most authoritative by the local search publishers, but can be hard for businesses to communicate out broadly to all of those platforms. So solution providers like Rio and Localease are working constantly to optimize this first-party business data to be used authoritatively and consistently across the numerous local search publishers so that these businesses can be found by the consumers that most need their products and services.
Great. Well, before we get into Q&A, I do want to just let everybody know is that we do have a white paper that's published on this to kind of help you understand the consumer journey and everything that goes along with that. You can find that at rioseo.com when you're able.
Great. Thank you, Brian and Lynn, so much for that. And I'll go ahead and get into some of the questions that we've received throughout the webinar. So the first one is, what can we as brands be doing to proactively service our clients digitally, considering the current state of affairs with COVID-19?
No, I'll go ahead and take that. I think there's a lot of stuff that's happening over the last recent weeks, and a lot of updates that are taking place with the different functionality that's being pushed on, or at least the governance is being pushed down. Local municipalities, state, or federal. Some of the things that we've been working with our clients is changing the listing name if there's curbside pickup, to basically render the type of services that are being available. I live in Denver. I know everything has been shut down, but there are a few select services and businesses that are able to remain open. And in those cases, we can turn around and change those specific local listings within Google My Business and other individual entities. You can do temporary hours for partial closure. And as well as there's Google My Business just released Google Posts with regards to COVID-19, things in which that you can begin to say what you're doing, how you're approaching it, and maybe what services and products are still available with your individual businesses.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Brian. The next question we have is, how can I reflect temporary closing for different store hours for my business during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yep, I can take that one, Lizzie. Yep. So we've, I think all of us in the local search space have been, communicating a lot over the last couple of weeks about how we can all work together to help businesses, survive these difficult times. I thought Google put out a good article about what guidance to take, and it not only applies to Google, but all of the search platforms that we work with. Rio and ourselves at Localease are all working to support these efforts. So let me just recap those real quick. So first is to update your business hours. If you have temporary business hours right now, you're in one of those areas that's still allowed to operate, or you're an essential business, definitely update that information so that folks don't drive to your store and get there and find that your doors are closed. Second is to manage the information about your listing. So there is typically a business description field that is offered through ourselves, Rio and Localease, that you can update to say things like temporarily closed, offering delivery only, information like that. And then also specifically applicable to Google is to create a post. So businesses can communicate that those special circumstances that I just mentioned specifically through a post. So one other thing that we've seen that Google is doing is they are working with the local authorities to represent temporary closures. You know, having worked in the local search space, I know that sometimes when you get broad data, that data may not always be accurate. So just wanted to communicate that businesses should check to make sure how their business is being reflected on Google and that it's accurate. And they can work to update that on Google specifically themselves. I know for those of us working in the industry that have API connections to Google, we would love a way to be able to update that temporary closure status via API. We communicated with Google this week, and they did mention to us that they have that API hook underway. So hopefully that'll be out soon, and we can help everybody get their information updated in a timely manner.
Thank you so much for that. The next one we have is, what are some of the things that other listing providers are doing to help communicate this change of business hours and availability to service customers?
Yeah, I think I mentioned a couple of them in that first scenario. One, making sure that you are staying on top of your specific hours, how you're publishing them. We all understand that the environment is changing daily, if not hourly. I think what we all need to realize is Google is being inundated with individual change requests. So be patient as you're publishing some of this. Some of the individual changes are going through right away via API. Some of them are a little delayed, but they are going through and getting processed, but it's just due to the high level of volume of information they're receiving on a continuous basis, right? Making sure that you change those hours based on local municipality or government regulations, and then you can certainly put them in as temporary hours so they expire at a certain point, so you still retain those individual original hours, but it's just a general overlay to say temporarily up through the 18th of April, we will be observing these hours, or we're closed. You can certainly do Google Posts. You can certainly put certain messages on your local pages, Locator to turn on and show what your availability and what types of services and products that you're doing. I have a lot of individual clients that are actually doing curbside checkout, order online, come, and then touchless individual sales process.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, the next one we have is, since Google accounts for the majority of search traffic, do inaccurate listings at sites other than Google really matter?
I'll take that one, Lizzie. Yep, that's a great question. And while Google is certainly the largest search engine with the most amount of traffic here in the US for sure, other search engines and online directories are still very much in use, Yahoo, YP, et cetera. And just wanted to reiterate that a single bad experience by a consumer can drive negative customer reviews, which then sort of have a ripple effect. Another important point is that the navigation systems source their own data. So Apple Maps here, TomTom, the individual car navigation systems, they all independently source. I know Localogy works with all of those partners to try and make sure we get all of our listings out to those guys in a timely fashion. And then lastly, Google does factor data consistency across sources into their search ranking results. So this includes direct data sourcing partnerships they have in addition to Google My Business and other information that they find from across the web, so links, articles, directories, etc. So listing accuracy as it appears across those sources definitely increases listing quality and search ranking.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynn. The next one I have is, you had mentioned that local strategies like feeding data syndicators is a long game. What's a reasonable amount of time for results to be shown for NAP consistency throughout the local ecosystem?
Yeah. I'm going to take that in a couple, I'll take it, but I'm going to answer it in a couple of individual different ways. I think so many people don't understand the benefits of going out to syndication partners like Localease and others in the industry. One is that you are feeding the individual source of information that many and other individual publishing platforms utilize and ultimately spread information on. So by going to the individual syndication partners, you're actually taking away that systemic issue of incorrect address or phone number or duplicate information, and you're actually combining it under one individual trusted entity, and you're actually actively feeding that information. So the second part is, how long does it take? It really depends on the cadence of how often you syndicate your data, how often the publishing partner does pull from the catalogs from Localease and others within the industry. I have seen growth within 3 to 6 months, which I always advise my clients that that's typically the long game. It, you know, individual partners, I mean, individual companies like Rio, we publish the information, we have to go through a cleansing process we do internally, and then it goes to Localease, and they go through their cleansing process, and then remember it's got to go into a catalog, and that catalog then needs to be received, and it depends on how that individual catalog is being received, if it's a flat file, if it's an API introduction, things like that. So that's where it's that variable 3 to 6 months. Typically, once you get that and it seamlessly goes, that information does continue to work to your advantage, and you see the vast majority of other sites beginning to utilize the same information that you're publishing, removing that systemic issue of incorrect or bad data that's out there in the ecosystem.
Great, thank you, Brian. And then we'll do the last one now. So the last one, how should I optimize my listings for voice search?
Yeah, voice search is definitely a hot topic in the search space right now. Every generation is welcoming its ease of use. You know, my own parents use it here at their house. And you know, I recall a stat in a recent article stating that consumer spending via voice assistants is expected to reach 18% of all sales by 2022. So definitely getting a significant market share. So I recommend a few steps that businesses can take to optimize their listings for voice search. So in addition to a lot of the things we've mentioned on this webinar about maintaining accurate and consistent business listings, a business should make sure that they're using structured data in the form of schema on their website. So the schema aims to standardize definitions, tags, and markups across search engines and platforms. And then specifically, businesses should incorporate local business structured data into their markup content, so search engines can respond easily to voice assistants with rich content about your business, such as your name, address, phone number, description of the business, hours, ratings, and so on. I know Rio published a great article about how to utilize structured schema strategies in January, if you want to check it out. And then lastly, I would say, in addition, make sure that your business listings are being fed to all of the voice search platforms. This includes ensuring your listings are getting to Apple for Siri, to Microsoft, who feeds Amazon Alexa, and to Google My Business, who obviously feeds Google Assistant. And Rio and Localease feed all of those channels.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you to both you, Lynn and Brian, for everything. That was great questions and discussion. And if your question was not answered, someone from either of those teams will reach out to you and follow up. But I want to thank you guys so much, especially the Neustar and Rio SEO, for putting together this webinar for us.
Absolutely.
Just a few more, thank you. And a few more items from Localogy before we end today's webinar. You will be able to view today's broadcast along with previous webinars on our website, localogy.com. Just navigate to research and resources, and then under there you'll fall under the category for webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to visit localogy.com and subscribe for updates to be the first to know about future webinars. We hope you guys have a great day and everyone stay safe.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.